Middle East AI News, December 23. Welcome to Middle East AI News. December 23. I'm pleased to introduce Part 1 of Carrington Malin's 2021 Middle East AI Roundup, recapping some of the top trends, initiatives and stories for the year. For Part 2, you'll have to wait until next week's newsletter. In the meantime, as always, check out the full text version of Carrington's LinkedIn newsletter for more detail, more stories and useful links. A year of empowering talent. For the GCC states, 2021 has been a year full of exciting new projects, futuristic proof of concepts and bold government initiatives. There seems to be a real and growing sense of urgency at a national level across the region to invest in the measures necessary to make economies competitive in the fourth industrial revolution. Key to success, of course, is having the right talent, and at all levels. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, in particular, have begun a wide range of programs this year to help create the talent ecosystems they need to be globally competitive. The world's first AI university, Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, welcomed its first class of 80 students in January 2021, and a further 74 students in for its September 2021 admission. With a goal to attract the brightest minds to the UAE, students have been accepted by the university from 29 countries, some from as far away as Colombia and Mexico. The AI University also launched an executive education program to help public and private sector leaders unlock AI's potential. Meanwhile, as highlighted in last week's newsletter, the UAE's Government Artificial Intelligence Program, run by the Uae National AI Program and Kellogg College, University of Oxford, has grown from strength to strength. More than 300 government attendees have graduated from the program, helping to increase capacity across over 90 local and federal government entities. Both Saudi Arabia and the UAE now also have large-scale programs that aim to dramatically increase the number of coders in their talent pools. Established in 2020, Uae Academy aims to help train and develop 100,000 Saudi programmers by 2030. And this year launched a boot camp to train 10,000 students in 13 Saudi regions, in partnership with Google, plus 40 intensive virtual training camps to train 1,500 graduates in future skills. It also launched Coder Hub, a learning portal with more than 400 coding challenges. SATR, another of the kingdom's learning platforms, aims to be the biggest for teaching programming and modern technologies in the Arabic language, with 50,000 Saudis participating in the pilot phase. In the UAE, the National Program for Coders this year set a target to train 100,000 coders, and has set out a plan to provide 100,000 golden 10-year UAE visas to the best computer programming talent, both in the Emirates and from around the globe. The UAE also announced that 8 universities in the country will train 20,000 students with coding skills, as part of the first phase of the program. Has the pace of digital policymaking in the Middle East stepped up? It's been a fascinating year for digital policy in the Middle East, with a wide variety of policy initiatives put in motion across the region. Different countries are all at different stages with the development of national AI strategy, and so also the programs and policies that they need to make AI strategies work. The great wave of digital transformation has exposed plenty of gaps in digital policy, as whole industries seem to be held back by the absence of adequate regulations in government processes. Digital legislation has received a lot more focus over the past couple of years, but there's still much work to do. While the UAE became one of the first countries in the world to announce a national artificial intelligence strategy in 2017, countries around the region have moved at their own pace. Saudi Arabia published its AI strategy last year, leading to a long list of new national initiatives. This year, Egypt and Turkey both announced their first national AI strategies, while Qatar formed a new committee to focus on the implementation of its 2019 AI strategy. Among other initiatives, Saudi Arabia and the UAE both announced Industry 4.0 programs to fast-track digital transformation in the industrial sector. In line with the kingdom's strategy to adopt fourth industrial revolution practices and technologies in its industrial sector, the Saudi Ministry of Industry and Mineral Resources plans to enable 4,000 factories to be automated within the next 5 years. In the UAE, the Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology launched Operation 300 Billion to digitize and develop the country's industrial sector, including creating a Champions 4.0 network of industrial leaders. The network will help local manufacturers embrace Industry 4.0. As a first step, it will identify and research 200 companies ripe for transformation. On the legal front, many trials using new, unregulated technologies for fintech, driverless vehicles, delivery drones and other projects have been given temporary approvals in the absence of relevant laws. However, regulation now seems to be catching up fast. Early this year, the Saudi Central Bank announced an open banking framework with a plan to allow new open banking services during the first half of 2022. Meanwhile, both Saudi Arabia and the UAE approved data protection laws that will come into force in January and March next year, respectively. Saudi's Communications and Information Technology Commission also launched a public consultation on the kingdom's draft digital content platform regulations. The Saudi General Authority of Civil Aviation, the UAE General Civil Aviation Authority and the Dubai Civil Aviation Authority are just some of the organizations working on new regulatory frameworks for unmanned aerial vehicles. However, current laws remain restrictive to new types of drone services, such as air taxis and drone delivery services, and the timeframes for new laws to be introduced are difficult to predict. The prospects for autonomous vehicle services seem to be looking up. In Saudi Arabia, although there is no approved legal framework for the operating of autonomous vehicle, or AVs, moves are afoot to pave the way for trials. This year, the Saudi Standards, Metrology and Quality Organization, SASO, issued regulations on the import of AVs into the Saudi market, while the Saudi Central Bank approved a first-of-its-kind insurance product designed to provide coverage for AVs. In the UAE, the cabinet approved a temporary license to allow trials of self-driving vehicles on the country's roads. However, perhaps one of the boldest AI-related moves this year was the UAE cabinet's decision to approve the use of facial recognition technology for public and private sector consumer services. A number of pilots have followed the decision, and the government has added biometric Face ID to its UAE Pass digital services app. UAE residents can now use their Face ID to access more than 6,000 digital public services via the app. In the banking sector, Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank and Mashreq Neo both launched services allowing residents to open bank accounts using Face IDs registered with the country's Ministry of Interior. We can certainly expect more services to implement Face ID during 2022. With the increase in focus by governments on digital policies and commitments already made to deliver policy and laws, 2022 is looking quite exciting. For starters, both Saudi and the UAE will have new data laws, while Saudi will allow open banking systems. Who knows, some of our long-awaited new drone regulations may finally see the light of day too. Autonomous retail enters reality. After a variety of retail experiments with AI, robotics, and intelligent automation over the past few years, we may look back on 2021 as the year that finally began to activate the Middle East's next-generation retail experience. This year saw ADNOC Distribution and Carrefour launch well-supported, state-of-the-art autonomous retail stores in the UAE, using smart shelves and offering a cashierless checkout experience for shoppers. Of course, AI and robotics have already been in use across the region behind the scenes, in logistics, warehousing, distribution, stock control and visitor analytics. Carrefour began using inventory tally robots, from California-based Simbe Robotics, in 2019, and has been adding to its robot fleet each year. However, 2021 was a good year for robots, front of house. There were some early pilots of restaurant service robots in 2019, but it was the coronavirus pandemic that encouraged cafes and restaurants across the region to buy their first service robots to meet the demand for contactless retail services. Building on those regional case studies, manufacturers of service robots, such as Pudu Robotics, have sales grow in 2021. There are also now signs that robots could be used more for delivery during the next couple of years. In 2020, Carrefour launched Click and Collect self-service at Dubai International Financial Center, using a robot to carry online grocery orders to customers' cars. At Expo 2020 Dubai, service robots from Terminus Group are delivering food ordered via restaurant ordering platform, Talabot, to customers across the Expo site. And there's a lot more to come. Berkeley-based delivery robot startup KiwiBot, Chinese autonomous delivery vehicle startup Neolix, and Moscow-headquartered internet and tech company Yandex, all signed agreements during the past few months to develop autonomous delivery solutions for retail in the Middle East. And that's part 1 of Carrington's 2021 Middle East AI Roundup. Do scroll through the full Middle East AI news on LinkedIn to read more about these stories and other breaking emerging tech news from around the region. Tune in next week to listen to part 2 of Carrington's 2021 recap. Thanks for listening.